This episode has been brought to you by EM Digital Marketing. EM Digital Marketing. We make your company social. Follow them on Facebook at EM Digital Marketing or visit www.emdigitalmarketing.com. This episode has also been brought to you by
Penelope's Bass Moms. If you want to just go buy them, go buy them. They're at the farmer's market. Which way are them?
In Brawley.
Brawley? That way or that way or that way or that way?
In Brawley.
But that way?
Yeah.
Okay. And then they're that way, and then we have the surprise ones. We have the coffee bean ones, and then the little plant ones, and then that's it.
Okay. Hope you enjoy. Hello, welcome to Small Town News Podcast. I'm here with Educator, a former teacher, Mr. David Phillips. Welcome. Tell me about yourself, Mr. Phillips, and we'll go from there.
Hi, Gil, my old friend, my old student. I guess I should start years ago. I'm an East Coast person, transplanted to the West Coast. I grew up on a farm in North Carolina in the Southeast, Southern boy, and migrated across the United States in steps, mostly in college, and ended up in Los Angeles and finished my bachelor's degrees and teaching credential in West Los Angeles at Pepperdine University. And I decided to move to the desert upon earning a teaching credential. Just an interesting move. To tell you the truth, I found it too glamorous, unbelievably, where I was.
Where you were or here?
No, at Pepperdine University in Malibu. The old stereotype is sort of true. The surfer boys and the movie stars and the Hollywood culture and the billionaires' kids were there, and life was good, and it was too good, and I don't know why, I just didn't like it that glamorous. So I said, when I graduate with my teaching credential, I want to go somewhere where it's hot, poor, dirty, remote, and the deserts were obviously fitting those categories. So I applied everywhere from the high desert, Barstow, Palmdale, Lancaster, up in that area, all the way down to the Mexican border. And Brawley Union High School in Imperial County here was the first school to ask me to come interview. And I did that and interviewed at several other schools, but Brawley was the first. And that was in 1989, 1990, right around there. And then Brawley was the first to give me a job offer after the interview. So the stars lined up for Brawley, California. I'd never been here before my job interview. I didn't really know what the area was like other than it was hot and poor and agricultural, that type of thing. So I came on a motorcycle in August and started my teaching career at Brawley High School 27 years ago. And that's the beginning of that story.
So you go back to why a place like Brawley. You said you wanted you were living in the glamorous. So why just complete opposite of that?
I did see the deserts of Southern California as a good center spot, a jumping off point for other places. I saw, hey, I can go to San Diego. I can go back to L.A., Orange County. I can run up to Sacramento. I can go to Phoenix, Tucson. Mexico is always, a prized destination for folks. And I could run to San Felipe quickly. I could run to, the heart of Mexico through Sonora. I could go to Tijuana, Ensenada, that type thing. And so it was just a good central location, I thought, for a lot of adventures, So have been doing some recently and plan to do some in the near future from here. So.
And you traveled a big. I remember in class you mention your travels.
I'm that type of person. I like to throw on the backpack and go.
Where have you been? Or yeah, tell me about some of the, I know. I remember some. You told me some, but I said high school. I was kind of mine was somewhere else.
Well, I did that thing in college where I attended school in Europe, a couple semesters in different places through exchange programs, and ended up with the Eurail train pass, some good friends, and a trusty backpack, and occasionally a sleeping bag, And so we did the Europe thing in North Africa, riding the trains, hitchhiking, camping, vagabonding, traveling any way we could get along, And that was a lot of fun and opened my life up, opened my eyes. Then eventually it led to things in the Middle East and Far East. So working in the summer in Israel, doing archaeology and excavation, and then teaching English in South Korea, and traveling at that time also to Japan and seeing that part of the world. And later my brother had moved to India, so I had gone to visit him. I went to visit him for one time for 3 weeks, and with stops in Thailand coming and going. So
So what did you learn the most from those travels, as far as bringing it back into teaching? Like, what did you, from seeing around the world and then coming back, and what did it teach you?
I would say the greatest thing that I gathered is that usually we don't know what the summit of human accomplishment looks like. There's a few places on earth where it's happened, and when you see it, it's a dazzling spectacle. I'll mention a few, in my opinion. Florence, Italy. When you see what was accomplished in the Italian Renaissance amongst the Italians and the Florentines in particular, it's just something that shines like nothing else that was ever accomplished in the humanities on this planet in human history. The music and the sculpture and the painting and the statuary, the grand villas and palazzos, what they conceived, and the banking system. I mean, we owe modern banking systems all Florentine Italian. The idea of a repository for money, and you earn interest, and a checking account. That was devised by the Italians, the Medici family specifically. And I'd say, as far as literature, being in London, England, that type of thing, seeing that, because I'm an English teacher, and having traveled to England several times and studying British literature of the British Renaissance, which occurred at approximately 200 years after the Italian Renaissance. That was another explosion of world-class caliber. I think the Brits did it again about 400 years later in the rock and roll pop music phenomenon that swept the world, in the 60s and 70s. They did it again. So they did it once in literature. The number of high-quality writers that came out of England in the 1600s and late 1500s, early 1600s is dazzling. Nothing like it before or since. And then the music scene with England and America working together, and we know that as Americans because we did get in on that thing. Young people in America know that. But the literature and the humanities that came out of England and Italy, and as far as the earth, we have a desert here, but go look at the Sahara. We have mountains. We have Mount Whitney in California, the highest mountain in the contiguous U.S. But when you go look at the Himalayas, there again, that's as big as it can get. And I like to bring that into the classroom, just being able to share that, my impressions of that with students. Hey, look at this. Think about this. Know this. And we have Mount Signal right over there across the border. It's 2,000 feet, but Mount Everest is 29,000 feet, so a little bit bigger hill.
Yeah, because I remember being in your class and you sharing a lot of your experiences. I remember, like, towards the end of the school year, you were bringing up, like, not the heavy stuff in a way. You brought up the housing crisis. I remember specifically you said, look, you're going to see houses. This was 2008.
Okay.
And it's going to look like a hockey player's mouth. It's going to be blacked out. This and
Teeth missing.
yeah, and at the time, I didn't realize, but and it was awesome. I really liked how you were open and sharing your experiences regarding life and the world and everything around us. And had Brooks Hanby come on recently. And I shared with him that you were the only teacher in my senior year who failed me.
Okay.
And I thank you for that, because I felt like that was the only grade I deserved in many of my classes. And because we talked about the educational system, and so thank you for failing me, because that's the only grade I deserved that year.
I don't know if I should say thank you or I'm sorry.
No, because I look back and I was telling him about it. I had my trials and tribulations after that, but that you were willing, because do you feel sometimes, what's the biggest difference you've seen? You said you've been teaching for 27 years. What's some of the big differences and changes from when you first started to now? Can you share? I don't know. Like I said, if you don't.
No, I can tell you what it is, but it sounds so horrible and so fatalistic and cynical and critical that I don't like to talk about it a lot. But I think smartphones in America have made us dumb. But I don't think it's just America. I think that humans anywhere on earth, in any culture, at any time, the more that is done for humans, the less we do then ourselves after that. Meaning, we as humans as a whole have a proclivity towards laziness and towards sloppiness. And anything that can encourage that and foster that, and those things just explode. Ignorance explodes when somebody else does everything for us. And the smartphone is so revolutionary and so powerful that we started as a group of teachers, at least this is my anecdote, at Brawley High School. About 5 years ago, we just started noticing a wave of students that were less able to execute things in the classroom, not by a little bit, but by far than students we'd had previously. And the first year you think, okay, it's a fluke. And in the second year, wait a minute. In the third year, you realize, okay, we are now getting the first generation of young people that grew up from age 2 with the smartphone in their hand. And it is so powerful, they haven't had to learn things because the phone can save them and rescue them. You don't have to know that in 1492 Columbus sailed the ocean blue, because you could just punch that in on the
Siri
phone.
can tell us that now.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. One second. Sorry about that. It's an off-the-wall show sometimes.
Hey, I'm okay. You're the one that's going to edit it.
Yeah. I try not to edit it. I try like little editing as possible. But, you said it goes back to, we have all this wealth of information in our hand. And that's the scary part. That it's too easy.
Well, here's how I feel about it as an educator. You can choose not to learn key factoids of human experience. You can choose not to learn your multiplication tables or parts of speech or geography or that type of thing. But when you learn those things, they function as cornerstones for further thought. And when we don't have them in our mind, when they're just in our phone, then what's our mind being occupied with? I'm going to go ahead and say a whole lot of trivial things, sadly, that won't matter a year from now, 5 years from now. But knowing that Beijing is the capital of China does matter 5 years from now. So it does matter that we know that in 1492 Columbus sailed the blue, because otherwise, I have students walking up to me, Mr. Phillips, did Gandhi and Jesus Christ live at the same time in history? No, why would you even think that? Well, I saw a music video where they were walking down the road together, and so I just thought they both wore sandals, and had long hair or something and a robe on. So I thought no, they actually lived about 2,000 years apart. So it's made us really know-nothing people, or that's what I see it developing into. And I think that's a threat to our culture, to democracy, to our future, to be know-nothing people. So we get this in the classroom. We'll ask students to recall something important for us that's a known fact in world history. You know, it's not an opinion. It's not how they feel about it. This is a fact. Do you know anything about it? And the look used to be, okay, a blank look on students' face. That was 10 years ago. Now it's a look of hurt or pain, like I just slapped the student. It's a completely different look on their face when I asked them, when did Columbus sail the ocean blue? Again, I said this happened about 5 years ago. I didn't know 5 years ago what that look meant. And then 4 years ago, and then now I'm figuring the look means this. And so you asked me what the big difference is between now and years ago. And that look signifies this. Why would you expect me to even know a thing like that if I can instantly just look it up on my phone? I've hurt the student by asking them that. I've asked them to, run 5 miles across a bed of hot coals. So it's a look of hurt. And we just didn't get that particular look in the eyes years ago. It was a look of foolishness or a look of surprise, but now it's a look of hurt. And I think that's a direct result of the cell phone being in everybody's pocket, doing everything for them. It rescues us all the time. We don't have to be organized people. We don't have to know things. We don't have to plan or the phone will do it for us. And it's like the old story that I'm sure you're not familiar with, Lazy Tommy Pumpkinhead.
No, yeah, you're right.
Okay, that's a story where it was set in the future. It came out in the 60s, and it was a remarkable story. I'm sure 99.999 folks don't know it, but Lazy Tommy Pumpkinhead, look it up on internet. Sorry,
Google it.
Yeah, sorry to say Google. But it was set in the future, and he had a house that everything was set up to do everything for him. He sat in a chair in the morning. A machine sat him in a chair, lifted him up out of his bed and put him in a chair. And it's imaginatively written and very illustrated in a very fun way. So you can still get hold of that book, Amazon. Sorry, more of that, right? But a machine in the kitchen cracked his eggs for him and made his omelet for him and actually spoon-fed it into his mouth, and he went through his whole day in this house with machines and gadgets doing everything for him. And again, the book is marvelously, the graphics, the illustrations are beautiful and wonderful. It doesn't look as pedantic as I'm sounding, but and then at the end of the day, a machine put him in bed, and then in the morning it woke him back up, and he just lived every day, 24 hours a day, with all his needs being taken care of by machines. And, that's sort of almost come true now. And it's a little bit, back then, a dystopian. There was, I'm sure, a wry grin on the writer's face, but it's not a grin anymore if it's hurting us. It's starting to become a grimace, not a grin. So that worries me. That concerns me as an educator.
And as an educator, how do you, address this, combat this? Or,
I can't. Yeah. Meaning I can't change my culture.
Yeah.
I can't stop an iPhone. I can't. So what I will do is model with my own life the fact that, hey, pre-smartphone learning is good, and here's what it's done for me, and here's what it could do for you, and this is pretty interesting. Oh, that is cool. Okay, yeah. And I try to remind students weekly that they are the first generation right now that's ever had a portable phone, and I would even call it a portable computer in their pocket. So you can't live without it. Every generation of humans before you has. And I sort of went through that with my own 2 daughters. We had our oldest daughter. Phones were just coming out when she was coming through her beginning years in high school, and she was texting people like crazy at one point. And, nobody knew how addictive it could become. And certainly her parents didn't know what it would mean for students, young people to be texting at 1 a.m. when they were supposed to be asleep, hiding under their sheets and that type of thing in bed, privately in their bedroom, unbeknownst to their parents. And we threatened to take her phone away, and she told us at that point, whatever this was, 7, 8, 9 years ago, you can't take my phone away. And going through that, I realized that's, the present generation's attitude at times. I have to have a phone. I can't live without it. You don't understand. Well, yeah, I do understand. I grew up without one, meaning you'd have to modify things in your life to live without it. But that's the way the rest of us since, caveman times have lived, so.
And you said you're her parent, and she's telling her parent.
Right.
I can imagine a teacher, when these phones are such a big distraction, how...
Well, we've had to unite as teachers and even as school-wide, so administrators back us too, and that is, no phones out during, class time unless the teacher says you can or asks you to. And I sometimes put my students to work on their phones researching things because I think it can be a great educational tool. So I encourage it when it's used well, when it's used like that. And I'd say that's about 40% of the time. The other 60% of the time, it's everything else.
Yeah, social media and...
Yeah. Man. It goes on and on and on, what they're doing on the phone now,
So...
But you asked me how I cope with when I'm seeing these negative things. There are positive things, too. The young people today are called the sight and sound generation. I've never had groups of students that were as talented art-wise as what I have right now, visual art. I have artists in my class that dazzle me, that I don't expect to be that nuanced and sophisticated in their ability to produce art, whether it's just pencil on paper or painting or definitely graphic design on a computer. They're fantastic at with the help of instructors at the school, principally Jonathan Archer, Mr. Archer. They do their Photoshop stuff in there, and it's very, it's amazing what can be done. But the hand-produced art is fantastic too, and their understanding and sophistication with music. Now, I'm not saying all my students are like that. They're not. Some are still fascinated with what I would call certain types of rap and hip-hop, which are very, very low on the musical inventiveness scale, Not to say that those forms as a whole can't be very creative. They can, but that's not how they're practiced by most. And I have a lot of students that don't aspire very high musically, but then others are very sophisticated, far more than they were 10, 20 years ago. So that's a positive in the class. I can always use art and music and design, and they are very, very good at that. They've seen it. They've grown up with it. And so that's a positive. I think the health and fitness and nutrition thing that's going on in the world and in our culture right now, and I know you're part of that. I always enjoyed seeing you out running the roads, and seeing you at races and that type of thing. So what that's like, the fitness revolution. My students are more interested in nutrition and fitness, and I mean cutting edge stuff and revolutionary stuff. When kids grow up on a feed lot in Brawley, but they want to be a vegetarian later, I think that's a big switch. So I have students that are that radical in their commitment to fitness and nutrition and better eating and better, healthier lifestyles. And I applaud them for that. I tell them we live in a hard time economically in our country. And pure classical learning, as we've discussed, is taking a hit. That's suffering. But there's other things in our culture right now that I think we are really, literally, without exaggeration, we're in a golden age. And I think we're in a golden age of understanding, led by not only trends in fitness like, say, yoga, the yoga explosion, but also findings nutritionally, health-wise. I mean, UCSD, what they discover every year. And 1998 Nobel Prize in Medicine awarded to the guys that discovered what nitric oxide does to the human circulatory system. And we're just discovering those things are very, very critical. The role of cholesterol in the body and how negative. When I was growing up, people told me, "Here, drink your milk, eat your butter, and
fry
it, and here's some pork links, and you need a steak." And all those things we know now are clogging up our hearts and arteries and leading to premature health problems. So I try to look on the bright side.
Yeah, thank you for giving me that.
I try to look on the positive side, and there are positive sides out there. And so I'm happy for those, and I congratulate students and celebrate them on their achievements in those areas. You know, we're getting ready to have Art Walk December 2nd in Brawley here, and some of my students will be exhibiting, and their work is just fine. It's fantastic. It's high quality, and I'm amazed at what they can do. So I tell them that. I let them know I'm their fans in those areas. I think sports has been a constant. It's always been high and good in America and still continues to be if people are interested in sports. We see in Brawley, Valley-wide, Brawley too, great successes in wrestling and football and swimming and track and soccer and go on and on and on. So that's good. I'm able to congratulate my students when I see them leaving it all on the court, putting it on the track, just leaving it all on the field. It's thrilling to watch them, even when they lose, as long as they lose like champions. It's fun. The agony and ecstasy of competition. And we've got some young people that always step up, and they're real gladiators, and I just get a thrill out of that. It's fun to watch. It's fun to be part of. So I've had a few chances in Brawley to coach sports, and that's been a thrill to me, and would do it again in the future if the chance arises. So that's good. That's a positive of the young people today, and I'm glad that American public schools are able to be part of the sports scene. In other countries they're not. Sports and school are two separate entities, but in our country we have the two, together. So that makes it enjoyable for an educator. Is I not only get to see the books, but I get to see the cleats and the locker room and the sweat and the agony and the press books and the band in the stands and the cheerleaders and all that goes with it.
Community coming together.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because you mentioned art, sports, but what about the heart? Like you said, I remember the research paper was a big thing in your class. That's why I failed. And now I'm still going to school, and now I'm back. I'm doing research papers every month.
Well, then you need to come to Brawley High and convince my administrators and fellow teachers and the bulk of the student body that's a big deal.
It's not required anymore?
It's definitely not required, and definitely not emphasized, I'll put it that way. And I think it should be. But again, I can't change my culture. I'm just not a one-man army, and you get tired of maybe getting beat up when you don't need to. Yeah. If you're holding us to a standard that nobody else really cares about, or I just know it's absolutely crucial in the world, and it will only become more so. And folks like you from the past have told me, hey, I took what I learned in your class, and it's helped me many times in my professional life, in my schooling, and I hear that. I still get emails from students that helped me so much, and now I'm engaged full-time in the research process, and it started in your classroom years ago, and I thank you for that. I still get those emails. I still bump into people in Yuma or San Diego or Coachella Valley and get the same kind of comments, but right now we have other things coming at us. The content standards that are being pushed out there a little bit. They don't forbid research projects and research papers, but on the other hand, there's so many other things that the standardized curriculum that's now being adopted by 48 states emphasizes that it sort of pushed the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. Didn't throw it out on its head, but just crowded it out a little bit. So maybe the pendulum will swing back in public schooling in the future a little bit more towards research. I think that the universities better start demanding it, that it occur in high schools, because they're going to spend too much remedial time at the university level trying to teach people how to research. Gil, I don't think it comes as a surprise to you if I ask a student to research. What they do is immediately pull their phone out of their pocket and say, okay, I'm ready. And they think that that's a powerful, high-level, professional quality research tool, and I tell them that's baby steps. That's I mean, Wikipedia is where you start, my friend. But so
And I got 50 million hits out here. That's very unfortunate. Because like I said, I didn't do the research paper. That's why I failed. And I look back, and I struggled when I went back to school because of that. And I was like, I remember thinking, oh, and then you had steps and you had it all planned out. And I was like, I found myself doing the exact steps you had asked of us. And so I had to go back, and I was like, man, that prepared me. Even though I didn't do it, it prepared me.
You knew that there was a structure and a logic to it, that you could follow steps and framework.
Yeah, he says universities will be having to teach remedial, and I felt like that. It costed me, and so, and that's the culture thing, though, right? They don't. Why is it? Because a research paper is harder to grade than a test?
Well, there's three things about it. It's hard to teach for the teacher, but I have my own system down, so it wasn't hard for me. But you pull in a 24-year-old teacher and tell them to command several classes doing this, and it's hard for them to. It doesn't come in a box. Meaning, I if I'm a beginning teacher, I can teach some pre-prepared lessons out of a box. Something I learned at my year of practice teaching at San Diego State or something. But a research paper, that's usually built up through years of people thinking about it and trial and error and step at a time. And so I reached that point where I was good at teaching it, but other teachers didn't have that kind of experience. So there's a point where a person at times in some places on earth becomes overqualified, if you know what I'm saying. So it's the first thing is it's hard to teach. Number two, it's hard for the students to execute it. And then the third thing I think is a very big factor in why it's not done so much right now at Brawley High. And the third thing is it's hard to grade. It takes a lot of time. So it's hard to teach for the teacher. It's hard to execute on the student's part. And then it comes back to the teacher. The second hard thing about it is it's hard to grade. It takes a lot of red ink. It's not something you can just machine score or get a student TA to take care of. So think about it. That's 2 strikes against a teacher. If a teacher wants to take on a research paper, they're dooming themselves to a semester or 2 of just slave labor in assault mines trying to get it done. And what young person wants to do that, I did it because I guess I was stupid like a donkey and just got into it and didn't realize how much pain and suffering it would cause for me. And I knew it was the right thing to do, that it was real teaching. Not the only real teaching, but it was a type of real teaching. So I did it, and it produced phenomenal results in some, and in others it produced failure. But you're thanking me for that, so I know even that failure in a way is not a failure. And our culture doesn't seem to understand that sometimes. They think pain is failure. They think loss is failure. No, if you learn from pain and loss, then that's a win. Now, it's a slow win. It's a win that comes later. But by your own words earlier, I think you demonstrated that you understand that you learned something from it and saw value in it. So that's the background on that.
Is schools becoming, like you said, it's hard. Is schools not challenging anymore? Or is that where it's going towards? Or
well, have they ever been? I don't know.
I graduated.
I do think that if a teacher wants to teach today in a fashion that's not very challenging, they can do so and make it look really good on paper and get by. And let me give you a quick example. And this is nothing new. In the old days, this is what teachers would do. This is decades ago. A teacher would set up a curriculum and just put on autopilot and do that same curriculum every year without much improvement or imagination or even keeping up with the times. So the joke years ago amongst teachers was he didn't teach for 40 years, he taught 1 year 40 times. So that's what educators in yesteryear were accused of, not being very innovative and just spending most of the time at their desk reading a newspaper while their students filled in worksheets or something. And of course, that's not good. But the modern right now corollary is you students design a PowerPoint presentation to teach this concept. Okay, so number one, students love that because it gets them on a computer and it's high tech and they can run around with a video camera at their friend's house on the weekend. Now, whether they learn anything or not, that's, questionable. So they come back to class. A teacher has no papers to grade. You have 5 students responsible for one presentation. So in one presentation, I can grade 5 kids rather than grading 5 papers, right? And I don't take any papers home in the evening. They had fun. They thought they learned. They were happy. It looks good to my administrator. We did some PowerPoint and I don't have to grade any papers. Okay, show me your... And it's mildly entertaining to me as a teacher to watch it, rather than going home with a red pen, and a pot of coffee and staying up till 1:30 at night grading papers. I got it done in class. The students are happy. Again, I occupied the day. My administrators are happy. I was mildly entertained. I'm finished. Now I can go shop at Macy's, I guess. And now, here's the bad news. Did anybody really learn anything? Yeah, we learned that in the end of Romeo and Juliet that Romeo died, and so did Juliet. And how many weekends did you work on that? That was a 3-weekend project. So in 3.5. It took us 3.5 because we had to do some editing on the 4th weekend. So 3.5 weekends, you learned that Romeo dies and Juliet dies at the... Did we really learn anything?
Well,
it goes on a lot.
So I guess now it becomes, who's working for who now? Is it teachers working for the administrators, or teachers working for the kids? And is that kind of how it goes? And like you said, it looks good on paper because someone has to monitor it and record it now.
Yes, I would say, oh boy, I hope I don't get myself in too much trouble, but we have now reached a point, and I'm not the only voice saying this, I hear it all the time, but still, it's a dissenting voice, and that is that teachers are not self-actualized too much anymore. Meaning, you don't go into teaching because you have a vision for what good teaching is, and you have a passion for it and a zest for it, and have actually trained for it, and have some ammunition, and have some autonomous thoughts and some independent ways you want to teach. A teacher nowadays must go in ready to comply with layers of rules and strictures and regulations cast down from Washington and Sacramento and your local school, your local community, local school board, local school entity. And I see teachers that are more afraid of checking off a list of things that they're told that they are responsible for than they are actually teaching with joy some part of... I'm only speaking for language arts now, but because that's what I know best. But say the English department at our school has an English department meeting, the teachers seem to be more afraid of, I see them all looking at a paper, okay, we've got to get this done and check this off and be worried about this, and this standardized test is coming and I have to know this password and we have to get this done. And I almost think that's as backwards as it could possibly be. Why are our students not learning? Were you able to learn anything from me as a teacher?
Yes.
Why? How did you learn from me? Did you feel my enthusiasm for things? Or did I give you a really good set of list of checkoff points and I told you to do them and be a good student?
Yeah, I think I didn't feel as there was like a curriculum in a way. Like you said, that one goes back to 1 year for. I felt like as if you had the enthusiasm that this was something tailored for us, for our
Let's deal
class.
with something meaningful.
Yeah.
Right.
And I learned from failure. And I feel, are sometimes teachers reluctant to fail a student because that might be a fail? They might see it as a failure on them.
I don't think that's the reason. Is they get tired of being pulled over to parent conferences in the counseling center and being threatened by veiled administrator comments or community gossip or parental anger, and there's a lot on the line. My daughter has qualified to go to UC Davis, and she has a partial scholarship, and you, teacher X, you're screwing that up by giving her a grade that we don't want her to have. Do you understand how much that will cost us if she doesn't get this scholarship? So what's a teacher to do at that point? Say, I don't care if I cost you $20,000? Because I do care. Now, I don't want to give a student a grade that he or she didn't earn, but on the other hand, I feel a pinch of, yeah, it's too bad that you've reached this point where your son or daughter has profited from inflated grades, and I'm the one that's got the pin that's going to pop the bubble. Why'd you put the pin in my hand? I hate to be the guy with the pin getting ready to pop the balloon. I wish it weren't there, but there's just a lot. We talk about high stakes testing. What are the stakes? The stakes are a young person's future, where they're going to end up attending college, and whether they'll qualify for scholarships. And I know that's a matter of dollars and cents, and that's critical. So I can't argue with that. I understand that. It puts an educator in a real difficult position. So what do? I split the difference. That's all I can do. Is I don't go high, I don't go low. I go in the middle and then pray for the best. So I have my detractors. I have people that hate me, and I have people that love me, and I ignore both of them. Either end, I ignore it. So you can praise me to the heavens, and I'll just ignore that. And you can curse me to the depths, and I'll ignore that. And I'll just keep doing what I know is the best that I can be doing as far as I'm able to. And some days I'm not able to, for this reason or that. But and then one day my career as an educator will be finished, and I'll walk away. And so I'm not going to put my ego too far out into it, just because don't need to do that, and it always gets butchered if you do. So
yeah. It's a lot. Yeah, people might just think teacher goes in the classroom, teachers, and
it's very political.
Yeah,
it's very political.
That goes unseen.
If I had known how political it would be when I started, I don't know. I would have had second thoughts about becoming an educator. I didn't know that there would be so many legal battles. And
has it always been like that?
I would guess it has, but most folks don't want to tell you that. And I think it is leaking out, and that's why we're having a teacher shortage right now. Young people don't want to get into it as much as they used to because of, like I said, the hoops that one has to jump through, and the legal battles, the politics, the pay, at least starting out, usually in America is not very good for teachers. Although at Brawley High, our pay is very good, so kudos to the community of Brawley for supporting its teachers. And we appreciate this town's support. Wage-wise, you've made it survivable for us, livable. So we thank you for our wages. We're grateful.
Yeah, because I took the CBEST out at one point, and I was like, I wonder what. And there's so much paperwork and all that. I was like, wow. And so I can see being in it, how much more paperwork, how much more, like I said, legal loopholes and requirements, and to teach. And on top of that, then dealing with the children.
Yeah. So probably the least prepared generation of students that America's ever had coming through right now. And then the amount of, as you said, paperwork and red tape that one has to go through is only going to become more. It's not going to become less in the future. So a lot of hoopla.
And are we holding the right? Does the community hold the people accountable? Do you feel like there's or maybe there's a sort of complacency?
Is it being effective? Yeah. All these hoops to jump through. Do you want me to tell you the truth, or should I be?
I like to the truth.
Oh, come on, Gil. It's like anything. The more we ask humans to be accountable for this or that, the more tricky we become at actually avoiding the accountability. We just become more sophisticated at going around it, at dodging it. So I'm sure on the day that the Titanic sunk, when the maintenance report came in, everything was in tip-top shape that day, I'm sure, All the equipment was in perfect working order, and, the sterling report, I'm sure that this ship is absolutely unsinkable, and,
Yeah, right when you said that, how we find ways tricky, I just thought about all the stuff I got away with, and I was like, man, yeah, you're right. And you're right. It's unfortunate.
Any human endeavor.
Yeah.
If we prohibit alcohol, then you're going to have the Al Capones pop up everywhere. Anytime humans are very ingenious when it comes to getting around barriers.
When there's a will, there's a way.
Right. So it applies, I think, to teaching quality and teaching accountability the same. I really do. I don't think teachers are any better now than they were previously. Maybe a little bit more distracted and less able to teach.
So what would you like to see? I mean, how do we, like I said, change the culture? Can we?
It's a good question. I think what you just asked is, can any culture make a U-turn? I'm going to give you two opinions, and one's negative and one's positive. I don't see the trend going anywhere but downhill, really, for our country. I think our economy will never be the same after 2008. I think that was the peak of our economic dominance of the world. And the 1900s will always be known in the history books as the American century, but I don't think the 2000s will. I think this will be the Chinese century, or maybe even a little bit more complex than that. But so I see America's fortunes as in slight decline, not horrible. We're not going to fall off a cliff overnight. We have too much accumulated wealth in this country for that to happen. And when I say accumulated wealth, I don't mean necessarily dollars, but intellectual wealth, cultural wealth. Just drive up and down the coast of California and you'll see wealth that will it's a spectacle. So we won't fall off a cliff overnight, but we will have less now than our parents had, your generation. And I think we expect less. Our morality's not as good as it has been in the past. I think there's a big moral component to it. There's a will component to it, meaning a student asked me one day, Mr. Phillips, what's so wrong as a nation? What's so wrong being number two? And when the student asked me that question, I knew it was over, because the student was saying, I'm willing to not be excellent. Number two's okay. And I didn't really say it at that moment, but I thought about it. As soon as a person or a nation, a culture settles for number two, then you're not going to be number two. You're going to be number 4, then number 7, then number 19, and then number 58. And you're saying I'm okay with sliding. So that's how I see my culture. That's what I'd put my money on. Although I wouldn't want to, that's where I'd put it. Now, here's the long shot. Of any culture, any people, any nation that's ever existed in history, I say that the United States, I look at the Mongols, I look at the Incas, the Mayas, the Greeks, the Romans. I'd say the United States has the best chance of making a U-turn of any culture that ever existed. And I'm fully aware of the cycle of nations. Google that if you don't know what that is. It's saying that all nations must go into decline. But I think the U.S. could have a U-turn if certain events came together. I think we stand the best chance of any civilization that's ever existed of getting back on our feet later. But we have to quit making excuses. We have to quit making things easy for people. We need to quit being so pleasure and comfort crazy. As a nation, we're just pleasure crazy and comfort crazy. We're thrill crazy. We like easy, rich calories too much, So in order to be the great nation again, we have to be highly disciplined people again and forego a lot of things that we've come to expect and become very comfortable with. So
Complacent.
We're very complacent. We're soft.
Yeah, it goes back to the, I've had people come in and express issues in the community, how the valley can get better.
Okay.
And they felt like there's been uphill battle when you point out a flaw in the system or a flaw in, it's some blowback, and when
boy.
and it's like,
Instantly.
wait, don't kill the messenger,
Right.
and
Oh boy.
and as I said, it goes back to it's not comforting to hear that you can do better, but
By the very fact that you and I are discussing this, though, in a public forum, is a good thing. So that's how we do it, is we keep discussing it, keep bringing it up, and we have to have enough moral courage and fearlessness to confront people and not be afraid of hurting feelings. When you failed in my class, did I apologize to you? I can't remember. Did I tell you I'm sorry? Did I show a lot of compassion? Or just did I say, well, this is what you earned and I have to give it to you? How do you remember it coming down? I don't know.
I don't remember. My mindset was I wasn't in a pretty I guess my mindset was completely different at the time. I can't remember. Honestly,
Okay. Well, when I was a parent, I wasn't one of those parents that said, this, I'm going to spank you right now, but it's going to hurt me worse than it's going to hurt you. No, this is going to hurt you pretty good, but I don't think you'll be doing this kind of thing again. So we have to not be afraid to parent. We have to not be afraid to teach.
I knew it was justified.
Okay.
When you said when you and I got usually sometimes like, that teacher, I knew though when that failed, like, okay,
that it was doable.
Yeah, I got that. That's on me. Like I didn't feel as if 'cause some people might get mad.
Rip off.
Yeah, like, oh no, that's no fair. I was like, because the way you're structured was you turn in this draft and you
Right.
turn in this.
At any point it was
Yeah, and so
and you just kept shining it on.
I was like, okay, I had a couple chances to
Right,
do
to jump
that.
in
So
and get it done.
yeah, that's
Okay.
on me. So,
But then I had counselors and administrators come and tell me that my whole process was unreasonable and that I should scrap it or at least water it down a lot. That's what one administrator told me.
what?
One administrator told me,
Let's just make it one-page research paper.
yeah, I got a lot of that. Oh yes, indeed, I got a lot of that. Or, why do you even want to do this? Or, are you sure you want to be doing this? Or, colleges don't require research anymore. And, oh, my eyes rolled back in my head. I got that from a counselor, a student, and administrator, that comment that universities don't require research anymore. Why they would tell me that, I have no idea, but it made their jobs easier. Pretend I have students that are failing, and they call the school and start chewing on the administrator's ear. Well, it makes the administrator's job easy if I back down and just give everybody, fun Fridays and popcorn and pizza parties and B's and A's, It makes the administrator's job much easier. Now, the test scores, the standardized nationwide test scores will be in the sewer, and our ability to enter quality four-year colleges will be in the gutter. But that doesn't seem to bother them too much. There's no administrators don't get a pay raise for students that succeed at Southern Missouri University or Notre Dame or Berkeley or Florida State so, what's the incentive to really teach? Let's get them graduated.
Yeah.
Let's keep the community happy.
Look at these numbers.
But they're know-nothing kids. Well, yeah, but I don't get a pay incentive for them to really know anything. So that's a negative that's driving a lot of things, a negative reality.
Man.
So a person's hope in any community is that the board and the community and the administrators realize we got to be ready for parents to be throwing fits and tantrums and threatening to sue, and we have to have rigor for all, not rigor for those who elect to have rigorous academic experience. And for those that don't, it's still cool. You graduate. So we're not quite there at Brawley High School, that rigor for all. It's rigor for those that elect to take rigorous classes and elect to have rigor fall upon them. But anybody else that doesn't want that, oh boy, it's just like pinball. You can get through the maze without getting hit by one of those flappers, you know.
Yeah, you go back to parents, and that's kind of that, like a double-edged sword of being in a small community, is that sometimes it might be hard to, when you know someone who, I mean, everyone knows everyone here, so to say, be tough at times when it's someone you personally know.
Hey, I scratched your back 3 years ago when I tiled your floor. Why don't you, my child's struggling in that English class, why don't you scratch my back a little bit, Mr. Administrator, and give me a little, Oh,
we went to school together. Yeah,
That. So, and perhaps that's what's got me into a lot of trouble, is I'm not from this community, so I didn't have those kind of connections when I first moved here. So I gave F's without too much remorse and without too much, well, I'll go ahead and say I lost 0 sleep handing out F's. But students always had earned it, and I could show you their trail of failures, and the paperwork was always there, but...
Or not there.
Yeah, or not there. But I think that there are plenty of people that are teachers that come out of this community that are reticent at times to give grades that students deserve because of, yes, the connections and the political favors that have been done in the past, and just, oh, I'm a nice person and you're a nice person too. Your child, a little stinker, but, let's just sort of gloss that over and go on and make nice, and everything will be pretty, and have too much controversy, and we'll get the diploma, and we'll just do that every year, and then
photo op.
So maybe some of that's going on.
So give me some hope. I think we're approaching the hour here. Yeah, we're approaching.
Well, the hope is again that anybody can access world-class education here in this dusty little cattle town. When I told students that 20 years ago, I didn't know that it would necessarily be through the internet, but I did know that one day you could, when I started at Brawley High, we had a library. And if you wanted to do research, you went in there and you got an old dusty book off a shelf and pulled it off, and dust fell on you. And the book was 40 years old, and we had a paucity of information, not enough. Now we have too much. And I tell my students today, your task in life is going to be to filter stuff, to discriminate. This is a good source, this is not. We didn't have enough sources. You folks have too many. So the good news is, if a student wants to be a world-class student, scholar right here in the desert, you can do that. No problem. I mean, Khan Academy on the internet or whatever, YouTube. So in any subject area, and we know that, So that's a positive. We have access. We have people that are willing to help you get where you want to go. If you're a migrant student, wow, the services and materials, anything you want, that's going to be provided for you at the snap of your fingers. So for those that aspire, they can get it. When I went to India years ago, and I was in a taxi cab, and a taxi cab driver was telling me we had a pretty long drive, I think 45-minute drive from someplace to someplace, and just remember him talking about American history, just facts and tidbits that I didn't know, that I found very fascinating. And I said, I find it amazing how knowledgeable you are on U.S. history, world events, political events. You're a taxi driver. In my country, you'd be a college professor. He had that level, that grasp on things. And he said, oh my goodness, in my country, there are just not the opportunity for someone born in poverty like myself. So yes, that is why I'm a taxi driver, but I constantly self-educate. And in America, we've said this forever. It's the American dream. If you want to work, you can get where you want to go, and you're not going to get extorted to death like you will in another country. You set up a taco stand and here comes the policeman ready for his cut on it, you know. We don't have that. So the good news is right here in Brawley, you know, like a Brooks Hamby, if you want to be an entrepreneur and the internet's going to help you get there, you can jump on that and wow, get so much advertising so quickly, and like your podcast, get out there on the air, and so all that's at their fingertips. I hope they see it and understand that it's golden, that the world hasn't had that in the past. I see it. Do you see it? You're in a position where you grasp the power of this.
Oh, yeah.
So I just hope they do and don't take it for granted just because they have a cell phone in each pocket that, you know, hum-de-dum, it's very boring living in this town. I don't think so. You have the tools at your disposal to make your life incredibly scintillating, explosive, so go for it. And that's what I hope to convey in the classroom every day, is that kind of enthusiasm and give them that kind of vision. So if I walk away having done that, then it's been a success.
Well, thank you, Mr. Phillips. I appreciate you coming on here. Like I said, you're the first teacher, one of my former teachers, and to have on here, and so I thank you. And for your willingness to talk and speak about this stuff and bring awareness. Because the community, we know we can do better. And it's weird because when you tell them that, there's blowback, but at the same time, we know it. We know we can do better, but it takes, it's tough. Like you said, it takes parents, teachers, administrators. It takes all of us. And, to really, to be the change. And so thank you for bringing awareness to this, Mr. Phillips. And I appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thanks, Gil.